We can start now. I want to welcome every one of us to another edition of our webinar. And this time we are having a career series, career pathways in clinical research. So if you're joining us, please go to the chat session and please say hello, tell us your name and where you're joining you. Then you can also put your questions as the webinar goes on so that we can interact, we can hear your questions. You can find someone who may be able to answer you there, or we pick it up and answer as the webinar goes on. So I want to welcome every one of us again to Career Pathways in Clinical Research. And this is brought to you by United Clinical Trial Support Services, UCTSS, Nigeria. So welcome everyone once again. So Benga is going to be the technical lead this evening. That's my team member. And I am Adejoke Jegede. I'm going to be taking a few minutes to share with us the overview of what we'll be discussing this evening before we go to the resource that we have today. We have three wonderful people, three people who will be sharing their experiences with us. They're going to be sharing their expertise, how they got into clinical research, what they are doing presently, the challenges, how they were able to overcome, and all of that. Okay, like I said earlier, we have three important personalities that will be sharing their experiences with us, how they got into clinical research, the challenges along the way, how they were able to mitigate, and what they did to still remain standing today. So before we go to what they have for us, the insights that they have for us, let me quickly take us on a journey to what we have this evening. Why this conversation matters. Clinical research is a rapidly evolving global field and it's not something that just erupted overnight. It's been everywhere, though out of our reach as Africans, or let me say as Western Africans. But we notice that clinical research is no more for a particular set of people. It's for everyone. And because it is a rapidly evolving global field, we need as many skilled professionals across every region to ensure that we as Africans, we can also do our thing, have a seat at the table, have drugs developed that are tailored to our peculiarities and so on. So why this conversation matters is because there's an increasing demand for skilled professionals across regions. So we need people in Nigeria to share their professionalism in Nigeria. We need people in Africa to do it for Africa and then to every part of the world. And many professionals lack clarity on entry points and growth pathways. And though we have many people that would want to go into clinical research, but they don't even know where to start from. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to speak with. They don't know how to get on that pathway. And this is what we are going to be looking at this evening, how to get clarity on the entry point and the growth pathways. And also to understand roles. Understanding roles helps professionals position themselves strategically. Yes. How do you position yourself if you don't even know the roles that are involved? How do you put yourself out there? How do you know that this suits you? How do you know this is what you can do if you don't understand the rules? So this conversation matters because we're going to be looking at different roles that professionals can see themselves through and position themselves strategically. Then also this session will explore practical career routes, required skills and progression opportunities. So it is not just the entry routes alone. It is going to also show us different routes, the required skills, the progression opportunities, the growth and the opportunities that are involved in clinical research. Thank you, Benga. The next slide, please. Okay, so this session format, what we have, the overview of what we have today is we're going to be looking at the short aspect insights from each of our speakers. Then we're going to be taking the questions, we're going to be answering questions, and we're going to be engaging. Then at the end of it, we look at the practical takeaways, the next steps. How exactly can we get into what we are looking at? And that is what this entire session is going to be on. Next slide, please. Okay, so before we go into the roles, I want us to understand the basics of clinical research, clinical trials in particular. Once we know the foundation, it is easy for us to know if this suits us, if this can work for us. So first, what is clinical trials? Now, please don't forget that this is just like the baseline. I'm laying the foundation, so I might speak very quickly so that we can have our professionals come in as soon as possible. So clinical trials are research studies conducted within a group of people according to a specific protocol, according to a specific blueprint, with the end goal of finding a new treatment for diseases. And they can be experimental, they can be expanded, and they can be observational, in that they could be interventional and they could be observational. Interventional means, okay, you are having this, we have this drug, this investigational drug, we want to use it on to test if it can work effectively on this disease. And we have the observational part, which looks at observing and collecting data from real life, real world conditions. So it could be collecting data for the past, and it could be collecting data for the future. That's retrospective. So let's look at the clinical trial stages. We have the preclinicals, we have the phase 1, the phase 2, the phase 3, and the phase 4. So the preclinicals is basically what happens in the lab. We assess the safety, we look at the effects in the lab, and most times this is done on animals. So it is basically animal testing. And for phase 1, we look at the test safety and the dosage, a small group of healthy volunteers. This is to help us to test whether this dosage that we are looking at is safe, and that the side effects are, we know the side effects. Then for phase 2, we have the evaluation evaluating the effectiveness and also safety. So this is tested on patients with the condition to determine if the treatment works or if it doesn't. Then we go to phase 3 to confirm effectiveness, to compare to existing treatments if there have been existing treatments before then. And this is done on a large scale, a large group of people across different locations and all of that. And in this case, we need regulatory approval if it is successful to go on into the phase 4, which is then post-marketing studies. So the phase 4 helps us to identify the long-term effect, the long-term risk, the long-term benefits of the drug. So this is the foundation, the definition, and the stages of clinical trials. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the benefits of conducting clinical research in Nigeria and why it matters? Okay, why it matters is that number one, we develop new treatments. They help us to develop new treatments that are peculiar to us. Now, this is just not benefits of conducting clinical research, it is benefits of conducting it in Nigeria. It helps us to develop new treatments that is peculiar to us, peculiar to our demography, peculiar to our genetic makeup, peculiar to how we live, peculiar to our quality of life. So all these trials lead to breakthrough in drugs, vaccines, therapies for diseases like cancer, diabetes, infectious diseases, sickle cell. Like it is said that sickle cell is an African thing. So yes, conducting it in Nigeria will help us to understand where we're going to, and how to have breakthroughs in these drugs. So number two is providing early access to innovative therapies. Yes, patients in trials often receive cutting-edge treatment before public availability. So there is a possibility that you have access to this treatment, and there is a possibility that it would work for you before it even goes into the public. So we provide benefits of conducting clinical research in Nigeria provides early access to innovative therapies. And number three, ensuring safety and effectiveness. Yes, when we conduct it in Nigeria for our people, by our people, it helps us to understand that safety is paramount, and we are keen to look at the effectiveness. So rigorous tested treatment helps to minimize risk and improve healthcare standards for our people. Personalized medicine. Research helps tailor treatments to individual genetic profiles and medical needs, like I said earlier, for us, by us. And it also enhances public health. Clinical trials drive global policies, reducing disease burden and increasing life expectancy. Like it is said, Africa has the largest disease burden, and the clinical trials that are conducted in her is not commensurate to what the disease burden is. Thank you very much. Next slide. Yes, by participating in and supporting clinical research, we are improving the livelihood of our people. So exploring career pathways and opportunities in clinical research. Clinical research is not just a one-way thing. It is huge. It is big. We have different departments. We have different arms. We have different people working currently working together to ensure that we have positive outcome. Now, We have the trial management. So we have the trial management, we have the data management, we have the statistics, we have the laboratory, we have the logistics, we have the quality assurance, and these are just few of what we have in clinical research. We have more than this. So if you're a student and you're um, looking into pathways, career pathways into clinical research, you have many roles to explore. You have a lot of roles to explore. These are just some of the roles that you can look at. So in trial management, we have clinical research manager, clinical research associate, investigators, assistants, trial managers, and many more. In data management, we have data entry, we have data managers, we have senior data managers, we have database officers, we have a lot of them. Also in statistics, most students will tell you, I study math. How can I, how does it relate to clinical research? There is the statistics, we have the biostatisticians. So we have medical statisticians, we have a lot of them. And same with the laboratory aspects, same with the logistics, and same with quality assurance. So we have a lot of opportunities in clinical research. These are just a few of them. Bring the next slide, please. Okay, so building resources in Nigeria. Since we have very few people who are really giving their all out to ensure that we bring as many people, especially the young ones, into clinical research. And it's over time we've just seen the older generation, the professors and the doctors in clinical research, but now we want to ensure that we have not just the elderly ones, but school, university students, graduate students, as many people as possible, because one, there's high demand for skilled professionals. 20% projected job growth by 2030. And that's a lot. 20% is a lot. So there's a projected job growth by that time, 2030. So we are looking at bringing a lot of people, especially the young ones, into this profession. Then evolutionary trends, we have opportunities in the pharma, the big pharma, the biotech, the CROs, the regulatory agencies, and many more. And the beauty of this is that we have flexible plans. You can work remotely, you can work hybrid, you can work full time. So you have different career options, either as a student, as a graduate, or as a professional. Then also we have opportunities for growth and certification. So it's not just that when you're there, you are there, like we discussed at our Tuesday evening meetings, our Tuesday evening, do I call it a smaller webinar, a smaller roundtable where we discuss? Yes, we discussed the last time on opportunities for growth and certifications. In clinical research, there are such opportunities also. And we have a lot of an increased global investment in clinical trials across African countries. So it is more like this is hot cake at the moment. Yes. Next slide, please. Okay, so I already mentioned this earlier, building and optimizing resources in Nigeria. Yes, so we want to enhance and encourage everyone. Okay, thank you. I can see that. Knowledge sharing on Tuesdays. Yes, knowledge sharing on Tuesdays. On Tuesday evening, the last one we discussed the opportunities for growth. Thank you very much. Please share the link so that as many that would like to join can join. Thank you very much, Precious. Okay, so how do we build and optimize resources in Nigeria? We encourage knowledge sharing, and that is what we do on Tuesdays. The experts speak, those who are more experienced than us speak, and those who are less experienced raise their concerns and questions, and it's always such a beautiful moment. So if you'd like to join us, the link is below, so please join us. Then also encourage an uptake of interest in the industry amongst the younger generation. This is what we do. We are looking into the future to include this curriculum in our universities and encourage as many young ones to take part in it. Then also to develop an open source of knowledge sharing to support government efforts. Yes, this is what we do on Tuesdays, and we're looking forward to doing more. Then partnerships and investments. If you want to collaborate with us, maybe you're from the government, the industry, or the academia, you're free to partner with us and to invest with us so that we can bring the younger generations up. I remember in November last year, we had a workshop at Uni Abuja, and it was such a beautiful moment because it was more like an open source of knowledge to the young ones. Then also cultural beliefs and awareness. Yes, we also want to enhance community engagement, building trust, and promote patient engagement groups. Yes, that is a whole, that is on another level actually. But I believe we're going to talk about this soon. So next slide, please. Okay, so join me to welcome our first speaker this evening in the person of Faith Garuba. She's a clinical research professional, clinical data and monitoring specialist. She has a BSc in pharmacology and a MPH, Masters of Public Health in view, and she's going to talk about our experience in clinical data management and the CRA pathway. So Faith Garba is a clinical research professional with experience in clinical data management and site monitoring, with a strong background.
So my name is Faith Garba, as she has rightly introduced, a clinical research professional. Currently work with Exxon Clinical Research. Yeah. Would you? All right. Thank you. So today I'll be focusing on clinical data management track, basically on the clinical research associate and clinical data specialist, because I previously worked as a clinical data specialist before moving on to the CRA role. Please, for today's for my while I'll be speaking, I'll be introducing what clinical data management is like in very simple terms, and we'll be explaining how trial data moves from sites down to the sponsors who are like the end users and everything. I'll also be showing or explaining how data is reviewed, how it is cleaned and protected, even in the process of research. We understand that this is like a very vital part of clinical research, right? How this data is being reviewed, how it is checked for correctness, both in the EDC from the source at the site, and how it is cleaned for errors and protected at the end of the whole clinical research process. And I'll also be talking about realistic career paths that are within the clinical data roles. Next slide, please. So my background and entry into clinical research. So personally, I think I'll be speaking a lot about myself. My first exposure or background to clinical research was from the basics of my BSc. I have a BSc in pharmacology, right? From the University of Lagos. And of course, pharmacology basically deals with the study of drugs, how they react to the body, how they react in the body, how the body responds to those drugs taken, how these drugs are being formulated, and what have you, like everything that has to do with drugs and the study of drugs and research. And also that was the first exposure I had to clinical research. And also, of course, in pharmacology, you get to do lab sections. And then the final year projects I actually worked on an actual research topic. I think I worked on the effect of Gongronema latifolium, which is like a very popular plant. I think in Igbo they call it utazi, one bitter plant like that. So I worked on the effect of that leaf, like the neuroprotective effect of it on mice. I think I can't really remember the topic, but basically we had to induce Parkinson-like symptoms in those mice, and then that plant has been found to have neuroprotective abilities, right? So we wanted to see how true this is. So we, after um, inducing Parkinson-like symptoms in these mice, we had to like start treating them. So those were like my first exposure to clinical research, and then I've always been passionate about data as well because I kind of took liking into data analysis. So I wanted something that could help me to merge the knowledge I had in data analysis and also clinical research. So that was how I got into Clean Focus as a clinical data specialist. So next slide. Exactly, we use utazi for okra, so it's actually quite healthy. And there've been some research that shows that it has some neuroprotective properties. That's the reason why we used it. So what is clinical data management? Clinical data management can basically be said to be the process of collecting data, cleaning and managing clinical data, clinical trial data. So for clinical data management, it ensures that the data is accurate, is complete and reliable, because this data is basically the bedrock of the clinical trial, right? For instance, if let me just use the everyday example we know. Someone is sick and the person had to go to the hospital. The first thing they might ask the patient, if the person can still talk, or the patient's relative that brought them is, okay, has this person had any past experience? Has there been a maybe like an occurrence of whatever the person is going through in the family, especially for those diseases that can be inherited and all those stuff like that, right? This is just to create a foundation for which they can start assessing what is wrong with the person. So in clinical trials, the data is very, very important because it is from this data, the results that are gotten from this data, that we can come to a reasonable conclusion. Basically, clinical trial is accurate data collection is very, very necessary and important in clinical trial because that's like the bedrock, and decisions have to be made based on this data. So clinical data management deals with how it is collected, how it is cleaned, how it is managed, and also logged from the previous slide that we shared. Now, it also supports regulatory submissions in line with the ICH GCP guidelines and study decisions. I already established that. In order to make clinical trial decisions, data is very, very important. That is what guides those decisions. That is what helps the sponsors and the regulatories to know if, yes, this medication that is under study for this particular disease is effective, if it is something that will be acceptable, if it is something that we can use to treat people, or it should be stopped, it should not go into the market. So it also directly impacts patient safety and trial credibility. Yes, imagine, this is just an instance, right? UCTSS is running a trial, and then we had to like forge data, and for a medication that did not work for what, let's assume we were trying to bring up a new formulation to treat malaria, right? And then the data is being forged. It's not exactly what it's supposed to be like. Oh, we actually found out that while we were treating patients with this medication, they were having crazy side effects that is even more, that outweighs the benefit of this medication. And because they've spent money on it, we have sponsors that have spent money on it, we just want this drug has to go out, it has to be approved and all, and it has to be marketed, and then we kind of like falsify data and all. It's, at the end of the day, it's going to affect the credibility of this trial and also patient safety. Because imagine we are formulating a medication to treat malaria, and then the side effect that comes with it can be like fainting spells, or what else? Something really, really not so crazy, but worse than malaria. So it doesn't make sense, right? So let's go to the next slide. That's why appropriate data management is very, very important in clinical trials. Please, next slide. Where does this clinical trial data come from? First of all, in no order, it comes from the electrical case report, from that's the ECRF from the study site. Now, the ECRF is like an electrical data management software, right? Where the sites uploads the data of the patients they are working with, or patients that are in these trials. So the ECRF is used to keep track of their data. Bear in mind that the site still has their own copies, which we refer to as the source document. That's the actual medical histories from hospitals, their lab results. Yes, the site has those, and they are kept in their records. But in order for, like myself as a clinical research associate now, in order for me to be able to access that data, in order for the sponsors or the clinical data managers to be able to access that data, it is through the ECRF that we get to be able to see it. And we now compare with what the site has when we go for site monitoring. So it can include their medical history, their vital signs, lab results, and efficacy assessments, because there are some assessments that are being performed for these patients that are in the trials. This is like when the study is already ongoing. So I want to believe that we have the basic knowledge of what clinical trial is and how clinical trial is done. So yes, clinical trial data can be gotten from case report forms, from laboratory and biomarker data from vendors. Test results such as their blood work, their biomarkers, they can check for potassium level, they can check for different things, and also their safety labs. So data is also gotten from there. Data can also be gotten from imaging results. They can do what's it called, MRIs and all those X-rays and what have you, mammograms and all. It can also be gotten from their ECG reports. Data can also be gotten from other okay, I already listed ECGs, MRI, CT scans, wearables, and other diagnostic tools. Also, patients reported outcomes and safety data. So during the course of clinical trials, we take record of adverse events. Like, this is very, very, very important. It's something that they don't joke with. Adverse events, the serious adverse events, and the concomitant medications. That is the medications that the patient is currently taking, even while enrolled in the trial. So, like I said, I believe we have basic knowledge of clinical trial, right? We know that for certain medications, for certain drugs that you are taking. For instance, if you're on anti-malarial drugs, you are not permitted to take what's it called, fruits, basically, that contains vitamins and because they react and all, right? So even in clinical trials, there are some drugs that are prohibited during the course of the trial. While you're on the trial, you can't take those medications, right? So while there are some other medications that do not interfere with the clinical trial, so you are permitted to take those, and those are what we call the concomitant medications. So these things are being recorded by the site and taking note of. Also, the adverse events. I explained earlier that imagine we have a drug that is in trial for probably treating malaria, and then there are also some side effects that comes with it. For instance, it can cause headache, it can cause dizziness, it can cause tiredness. Yes, these are side effects, the adverse events rather, that need to be taken note of. We need to keep record of them. So the clinical trial data comes from those sources. Also, vendor and third-party data. So data from external providers like the imaging vendors, the pharmacokinetic labs, and the ePro platforms are also sources of clinical trial data. Next slide. How does this data flow in clinical trial? I explained earlier, it has to be entered by the site staff into the EDC system. So that's where we have the clinical research coordinators at the sites. They are the ones that enter the data. They are the ones that also do some of the vital science. They usually have nurses, and then there's also a principal investigator that's like the overall person that oversees the trial there at the sites, right?
Whilst we're waiting for Faith, if you have any questions, kindly please prepare your questions as we go, or you can drop them in the chat. Thank you.
It can also be entered into the EDC by the site staff. Then there's an initial review by the CRAs during the monitoring visits. It depends on the protocol and the monitoring plan for each study. So, for instance, I have a study currently that monitoring visits has to occur within every 6 months. However, there are some triggers that this site or meet or subjects meet. For instance, if they enroll subjects a lot, like there's like is a high enrolling site, or there are quite a number of adverse events, maybe queries, they are not responding to queries, and there's just some triggers they will meet, and a monitoring visit has to be done earlier than the 6 months. So when the CRA goes there, it reviews their source documents, performs SDV and whatever, just to compare the data in the EDC with what is at their sites. That's the original source documents for each patient. Also, there's an ongoing review and cleaning of data by the data team. This is the data management team. They review the data, they clean data for errors, for data that are not in alignment with what is there. They do data cleaning and all. There's also query resolution with sites and vendors. So most times, if there's maybe like a difference between what is in the source with what you are seeing in the EDC, you have to issue a query on the EDC to the site. Okay, for instance, in the source, we are seeing that the patient's blood pressure was 100 over 130, right? And then in the EDC, you are seeing 60 over 120. So it shows that there's like a discrepancy. So we have to issue a query, and the site has to respond to it and either correct the data or clarify why it was entered as that. Also, there's the database log and the final data transfer to sponsors. Now, database log is basically something they do to probably when they want to perform data cleaning. Yes, the EDC will be logged so that they can't change data or enter data anymore. There are initial database logs they just do in between the studies, and then there's also the final database log that is done at the end of the study before the data is now transferred to the sponsor. Please, next slide.
So I think this is quite extensive in terms of clinical data management and the process. So currently your role, what role do you work on in now? You're a CRA or you're a
I
clinical data manager?
currently work as a clinical research associate. That's a CRA.
Okay. Do you want to talk us through how did you get into this role, and what are your daily activities, and what's the specific skills that you require for you to get this type of role?
Okay, so as a clinical research associate, how did I get into this role?
Mm-hmm.
I think the basic thing, that got me into this role was my um my background in pharmacology, right? I think that established the knowledge first, because this gave me an opportunity to see, like, for real, the things I learned in school. Basically, I mean, in Nigeria, there are more of theoretical things you just hear, and that's how it is done. But this gave me the foundation to enter into clinical research. And like I said earlier, I worked initially as a clinical data specialist, but currently I work as a CRA. So, what are the skills that are required for your role as a CRA? Basic, what's it called? Data skills, right? You also you need basic clinical skills, clinical trial skills, like just know what clinical trial is about, what is research, basic research skills. Exactly, you need to know about research, what it is about. So I hadn't previously worked as a clinical research, so it was just like an entry role. And
Mhm.
then what is my day-to-day task like
Mhm.
for every day? Not always, but basic day-to-day tasks. I i we do what's it called, clinical site monitoring visits, but like I
Mhm.
established, it's not always, probably
Mhm.
maybe 3 months, 2 months. Yes, so during the site visits, we are able to review source documents as against what is
Mhm.
in the EDC, right?
Mhm.
Just to confirm that what is being entered into the EDC matches exactly what is in the source. What's like is exactly what the the patient gave.
Mhm.
Also, I review the what is in the EDC. I issue
Mhm.
queries when there's any discrepancy. I
Mhm.
also look out for um, protocol deviations. Yes.
Mhm.
So for every study, there's a protocol that guides what is to be done, how it is to be done, the data that needs to be collected, when it should be done based on the schedule of assessment, right? The time at which each of these maybe assessments should be carried out. So we have to make sure that the site is actually following this schedule of assessments, and those are the things I also look out for. So if there's like any form of deviation, for instance, when there's like supposed to be a 3 weeks visit, and the
Mhm.
sites the patient comes in after 3 weeks or
Mhm.
before 3 weeks, a query
Mhm.
will be issued. Okay, this visit is supposed to happen maybe on the 3rd of February. Why is it on the whatever? Please, can you clarify? It might be that the patient could not make it because of maybe they were not feeling too well, or something came up, right? It has to come to the notice of the CRA. So most times we always tell the site, for anything that will not go according to the protocol or the monitoring plan, please make sure you inform the CRA, because we are like your first point of contact.
Mhm.
And once you relate to us, we are able to also relate to the what's it called, the sponsors, like through the leads and all. Yeah, so we also monitor for these things. They have to enter data correctly, they have to
Mhm.
follow the schedule of assessment. We also
Mhm.
watch out for protocol deviations.
Mhm.
They are correctly recorded, because the
Mhm.
site also needs to have a record of these protocol deviations as well as
Mhm.
the CRE, just for comparison. Yeah.
Mhm. So essentially, your role is you're a monitor, so to speak.
Yes,
So yes,
exactly.
because when we say clinical research associate, it's quite a broad and long name. And for people who actually don't know what this is, the most common name, the common name for CRAs are called monitors. And the reason why
Exactly.
they are called monitors is because they are the ones that interact directly with the sites on behalf of the
Exactly.
sponsor. Just as you
Yes.
said that, you are the first point of contact. So what I know or what I've seen with CRAs and what CRAs have done, you have those CRAs who actually perform the site visits, and they are there face to face, sat down with the principal investigators, the research nurses, the site coordinators. They sit down there with them, they have this conversation, they provide training, they review all of the documents there, then they make sure that they are filing their documents correctly. They
Yes.
review things like the ISF, what you call the investigator site file, to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that they are filing every document. If you joined so we had the knowledge sharing on Tuesday, and one of the things we talked about the challenge within clinical research is that it is a highly documented sector. Everything you do must be documented. If you do not document it, then
Exactly.
it says that it's not been done or it didn't happen.
Exactly.
So it
Yes.
must be documented. So the role that the monitor or the clinical research associate plays is that they want to ensure that the sites, which are the hospitals, are aligning themselves with the requirements of the protocol. So before we go forward, there's a question in the chat. It says, is there anything else that people who do not have a pharmacology background but have a strong interest in clinical research, is there anything else they can leverage aside from the skills you have mentioned? What do you think, Faith?
People that do not have a pharmacology background but are
Yes,
interested in,
clinical
yeah.
research. Yeah.
Exactly. So I know quite a number of people that are in clinical research but do not have a background in pharmacology. So I
Mhm.
think first of all, you already have the what's it called, the interest, and I think taking courses also help, because I did take quite a number of courses that gave me the background. I think that's like the one of the basic foundation that could also help you, give you an insight into what research is about. And also, I think industries recognize those certifications or some of the courses you take. It will also just give them the knowledge that, oh, this person is interested and knows the basic things. Because in clinical research, I think one thing I enjoy about it is you learn every day. There's always something new to handle and tackle.
Mhm.
It's not just,
Mhm.
it's not cliche. You don't repeat
Mhm.
as much as, yes, there are some things you have to do very often,
Which is
every time. But
standard. Mhm.
exactly. but you still learn new things. So I think you can also take courses, take trainings, and I think UCTSS does something like that. Those workshops and trainings, those are also good places to start from. Yes, so things like that could also help.
Absolutely. So we've put a link in the chat for you to join our community group. We have a community group you can join. We are constantly posting a lot of information there. We have knowledge sharing every Tuesday. We bring whatever is burning in our hearts there, and we all discuss and hash it out. So there's another question on the chat. It says, I'm a biochemist. And first of all, Elizabeth Adeshino, I don't know if we answered part of your question. So basically, you don't necessarily have to be a pharmacologist. For me, for instance, I think if you've seen one of my webinars, or you can go back and check our webinars, Precious, please post our YouTube channel so that people can pick up the links there. Well, I mentioned there, my first degree was in biology and education. So I was meant to be a teacher. As the way we run it in Nigeria, if you study biology, you will be a teacher. But I eventually went to the UK, studied masters in project management, and I was planning to return to Nigeria. And I got this opportunity, to work with a company which was a vendor to the clinical research industry. And what they did was, you mentioned EPRO earlier. So that's a company that actually develops the software for electronic patient reported outcomes. So I worked there as a CTA, a clinical trial admin assistant. So before you become a CRA, for somebody like Faith, she majored in pharmacology. So like she said, it gave her a leverage. For people like us who are not pharmacologists, who are like basic biologists, you have an opportunity. You can go in as a CTA. And as Faith already said, I started as a CTA. From being a CTA, I became a project coordinator. And from there, I saw that I could do a lot of certification of courses. I did a course, which we are in UCTSS, we are going to be rolling out a LMS, which is like a online learning community, so that you can do a lot of different courses there. You can pick, for instance, Faith has given us an extremely robust conversation and topic on clinical data management and how that process is done. So clinical research is huge. So we are going to be rolling out a learning management system very soon, and you can go online and train yourself. But as I said, it requires a lot of self-training when you're within clinical research. So I took a couple of courses. I did a course with a company called ParExcel. They are based in Berlin. I did that course, and it's called Clinical Trial Management Studies. And, I was able to kind of like add that as a postgraduate diploma on my master's that I already had. So yes, clinical research is unique. It's a specific type of pathway. You can't just come from any background, but you can start. The entry point, there's an entry point for you, which is being a trial admin assistant, because you being an admin assistant, it exposes you to the whole world or the ecosystem of clinical research, and you can start to pick up a lot of information from that system. For somebody like Faith, I'm sure, Faith, you have CTAs that work with you, right?
Yes, yes.
Exactly. You have CTAs that work with you, and then you have project managers that you report to, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So for you to be, if you're interested in being a CRA and you're not a pharmacologist, or you're not a medical biologist, or you don't have that biomedical background, start from the basic. You can be an administrator. You start as a CTA. If you start as a CTA, you are helping to manage trackers. You are taking meeting minutes. You're sitting in minutes. People are sending you stuff to do. You are editing documents. You are editing ICFs. You are following up with medical professionals, or the clinicians, or the pharmacologists, or whatever. You start gleaning, you start soaking in this information, and it will start to arouse your interest, and that interest will lead you to start to look for what's the best way for me to actually enter into this industry. What Faith said something that hit me. She said I enjoy working in clinical research. If you don't enjoy it, my dear, you are not for this space, because it is hard work. We had this conversation on Tuesday. You have to be prepared to enjoy it. That means there's going to be the days that you are under pressure, you enjoy it. Somebody posted something like on LinkedIn and said, not one day is the same in the world of clinical research. You can wake up in the morning and something happened to a patient, maybe withdrew their consent, and bedlam happens and everybody's running helter-skelter. Or your recruitment number suddenly drops. As a project manager, that is hell for you, because the sponsors are coming after you. So it's a very interesting, because of our time, I'm going to wrap up. Faith, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add in terms of like how people can get on board. I think we had another question from somebody. Somebody said, I'm a biochemist, how do I transition? I believe I've answered part of your question, Ruth Amina. And then as someone who studied research ethics for my master's, which role would be an easy route to get into clinical research career? And how can my dear, you can solve our problem and just go to National Health Research Ethics Committee straight away and start contributing fully there. Even as a research ethics person, you don't even need somebody to give you a job. Just get on and start to review all our processes. If you can, please review our processes on how we manage submissions in Nigeria and how we can actually scale down our timelines for submission approvals. My darling, you get a job immediately, trust me. But jokes aside, um, HRA, Health Research Authority in the UK, they're always looking for people. You don't have to be living in the UK. They want people who can actually sit down and review their processes and give them feedback. And they like people who are like random and, not part of the system, because you are bringing a fresh pair of eyes and you are reviewing it with no bias at all. So you have opportunities in front of you. Just dive into that world and just type it out. Thank God for COVID. COVID, in as much as COVID looked so bad to everybody, COVID saved a lot of people, because people like Faith can work remotely now. She doesn't have to be on ground and work with an international sponsor. And you can do the same thing as well if it's research ethics that you actually have. Yeah, so we are going to skip forward quickly. Faith, is there anything else that you want to touch? Because I'm mindful of time so that we can bring in the next speaker.
I think we've spoken about the important things.
Okay.
So you also established some of the entry level roles that you could actually use to enter into clinical research. I mean, even for someone who doesn't really have those background, I think for most people they start as clinical data coordinators. That's
Mm-hmm.
for site level before
Mm-hmm.
they now get into the CRA role. So it gives them
Mm-hmm.
the basic knowledge of
Mm-hmm.
what clinical research is about. So that's like also um a good pathway to begin from. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I love this slide. I mean, it's quite very clear that, for you, the entry pathway into clinical data management, CDC, it's a very important role because they're the ones that enter data at sites. But even if you don't have that opportunity working directly with hospitals, you can check with any of the sponsors. The sponsors, they usually have in-house data coordinators. They have
Mhm.
in-house CRAs. They have in-house CTAs. They're always looking for admin because, like I said, document manager management is like the huge thing. You actually have roles for document management within the clinical research industry. There's what you call TMF, which is the trial management filing. I know directors, they'll be like director TMF, right? There are roles for that. So there's a lot of opportunity. We can't cover everything today. We are going to start from the entry points, and then we start to look at other roles as well. We want to thank Faith for helping us cover CRA and data, clinical data management role. At the same time, we appreciate you. Entry level CDC, check it out. Data entry, your responsibilities, they are all listed out. If you want us to send this slide to you, we can send this slide to you if you are really focused on clinical data management. One of the things that she said in terms of like skills needed, attention to detail. You can't trade that. Attention to detail is extremely needed. Knowledge of EDC systems, again, we have so many acronyms in this industry. So as you were talking, I was helping you type some of those acronyms
Yes.
out. EDC is electronic data capture system, which is basically a data management. This is where you enter all of the details or the data that you're collecting at sites, and then you use the CRF, which is the case report form, to enter that data for specific patients, because each of the patients will have their own individual patient or unique IDs. Yeah. And then obviously you have the GCP knowledge. We are going to run a GCP session, I think middle of this year. Joke, please take notes. We'll run a GCP session so that we can bring people in. We do like a master class, and you can again come on board, ask direct questions. All this information, they are out there, but what we are helping people to do is to facilitate, you getting access to this information, and then you can ask us questions. We can either provide that support to you, or we can point you in the direction that you need it. So thank you very much, Faith, for
Thank
this
you.
session. Thank you very much. Joke, I'll hand back to you and introduce the next speaker.
We'll be moving on to Dr. Shamsu Mohammad Iguda. He's a hematology senior resident physician from Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital, Kano, Nigeria. Thank you very much for taking our time to speak with us. Please, you can go on, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. And thank you to United Clinical Trial Service Support for the invitation and for bringing together students, clinicians, and early career researchers interested in research and industry career. As introduced, my name is Dr. Shams Muhammad Iguda. and I'm a hematology senior resident and medical monitor involved in clinical research and safety oversights, particularly in multi-center and international trials. And today I will be speaking about medical monitoring, not just as a job title, but as a clinical responsibility, a strategic safety function, and a career pathway for physicians who wants to remain clinically relevant while working in research. And that means extra money. I will structure my discussion around three broad questions. Number one is the need. Then we are going to look at the role and then the growth. So first, we are looking at why clinical trial need physicians-led oversight. And two, we are going to look at what the medical monitor actually does in practice and beyond job description. And lastly, we are going to look at how clinicians can grow into medical oversight and industry leadership roles without probably abandoning their clinical identity. So it is imperative for a clinicians to have these skills and the ability, because clinical trials are conducted in real patients and not textbook patients. So therefore, you have to understand the complex comorbidities of the patient. And the second thing is that you have to have diagnostic reasoning. That is the ability to detect safety signals before they manifest as data outlier. And it's one of the major responsibility of a medical monitor. Because detecting safety signals often require clinical reasoning, not just statistical threshold. And this is why medical monitoring cannot be reduced to checklist or dashboards. Clinical research, is structured medicine practice under regulatory governance with global accountability. So next slide. So my transition from clinical practice to research oversight. So my entry into clinical research was rooted in clinical trust and responsibility. When one of my friend who started working in a research team, he planned to leave the country, in other words, Japan. So when such study was in the process, so in 2021, he joined me with the multidisciplinary team working on the SPEAR study. SPEAR is a short form of stroke prevention in young adults. So it's an observational trial examining neurological injury in adolescent and young adults with sickle cell disease. So this was a collaboration between Vanderbilt University Medical Center in USA and Amin Kano Teaching Hospital, which was led by Professor Michael Dubon, one of known physician scientists in the United States. So at that time I was practicing as a medical officer in a rural setting. So I was trained into uh, uh, protocol driving assessments, including how to do cognitive assessments, how the um, clinical trial workflow works. So it was all trained by my friend before leaving. So, but before joining the team, I had to get GCP certificate. That is good clinical practice certificate. So as the study progressed, my responsibility expanded. What was initially planned as a 1 year study was extended to 10 years, and it allowing continuity of clinical and research oversight. So during this period, around 2023, I entered residency training at the same institution, that is Amin Kano Teaching Hospital, which further strengthened my clinical grounding. And towards the completion of the SPEAR study that I started 2021, that is around 2024, I was invited by the principal investigator to serve as a medical monitor for the Spring 2 trial. And Spring 2 trial is a multi-center interventional trial evaluating the use of hydroxyurea for primary stroke prevention in children with sickle cell disease. So in this role, I provided medical and safety oversight for Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital because the sites involve Murtala Specialist Hospital is a state tertiary institution and Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital. So I serve the role of medical monitor in Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital. So this progression from the site, from site-based clinical research to formal medical monitoring has shaped my understanding of how clinical judgment protect patients at a scale. So clinical practice exposes us to variability because if you are doing your clinical practices, you will be coming across so many patients coming with different symptoms and management of those patients it requires you have to individualize the management of such patients. So that is basically somehow same thing you will be doing in medical monitoring. But in this aspect, you will be dealing with a large number of patients and you have to, the responsibility has to be a protocol driving. So my transition into research made one thing clear: protocols are not obstacle to care. They are safety framework, and documentation in research is not bureaucracy. It is verifiable evidence that protects patients, investigators, and sponsors. Next slide, please. So, as a medical monitor, medical monitor is a physician with independent clinical judgment. So can be able to make your judgment individually. Main responsibility spans across sites and population. And the role of the medical monitor, one includes ongoing clinical oversight of global trial participants, real-time review and interpretation of safety data, medical evaluation of adverse event and protocol deviation, and recommending critical safety action to trial sponsor. For example, if a certain drug needs to be adjusted or need to be stopped for a particular participant, a medical monitor can advise or suggest for the sponsor for such recommendation. So at its core, medical monitor safeguards both participants and the trial integrity. So next slide, please. So the strategic responsibility of a medical monitor has responsibility in safety data review by evaluating laboratory trend across population to detect safety risk area. So it is responsibility of a medical monitor to look at the lab result of participant to detect if there is any significant outlier. For example, there is a case I encountered, I think last 2 weeks ago. That participant, a sickle cell patient, had full blood count as part of the monitoring. They do 6-monthly full blood count. So when reviewing the lab result of that participant, so I discovered the hematocrit of that participant is around 54%. Yes, for normal individuals, that's a normal PCV. But for patients with sickle cell disease, that PCV is too high and it can lead to a catastrophic outcome, which is stroke. So I called the attention of the team that PCB is not tallying with that participant's clinical condition. Likely, this patient, either of the two happened is either he was over transfused with blood, or this is not the participant's blood sample that was taken for that investigation. So they had to call the patient back, and another sample was taken, and all and behold, another different lab result. So likely the first one that was taken, it wasn't his, maybe there was mixture somewhere in the lab. So if had it been such without the responsibility of a medical monitor and that data has been just entered into electronic medical report, and when the statistician is running the analysis, and it will just flag this as outlier, and so many questions will start to be raised. So, and another thing, causality assessment determining the clinical relationship between study product and event. It is the responsibility of a medical monitor to know if certain events or side effect is associated with certain medication or not. So it requires separating disease-related event from product-related risk. And it is also responsibility of a medical monitor to ensure enrollment align with protocol-defined safety boundaries. Uh, so like example, if you want to enroll because you are looking at certain characteristics, maybe for certain disease, let's say because I'm more familiar with clinical trial and sickle cell disease, maybe you want to enroll a participant with sickle cell and it happen you enroll someone with AS genotype or with AE. So definitely you are violating the protocol, you are deviating. So that person might create a significant outlier or something different in your study. So it is responsibility of the medical monitor to ensure everything aligned with the protocol. And it medical monitor also recommend dose adjustment or protocol amendment based on emerging data. And as severity versus seriousness in medical monitoring, you have to understand this because this distinction is foundational. Because severity describes intensity, that is how bad an event feels clinically, while seriousness is a regulatory classification based on outcomes like hospitalization, disability, or death. A severe headache may not be serious, while if you have a mild arrhythmia, may be very serious. So medical monitors must think clinically and regulatorily at the same time, which is one of the basic skills needed by a medical monitor. And as a physician, these skills uh, you have acquired it over time, right from your medical school. You know how to take patient history. You know how to make examine patient, review patient lab results to determine any significant clinical lab value. Lab value for you to make your diagnosis. So if you have your medical knowledge, medical degree is a foundation for you as a medical monitor. So for how can you make medical judgment? To make medical judgment, it integrates. Yes, yes, thank you. For you to establish medical judgment, it integrates structured evaluation across 4 dimensions. We have to have temporal link, that is onset timing related to a drug administration. When does certain symptoms happen after administration of certain medication? And the second one is you have to have biological plausibility, that is alignment with a non-pharmacology. You have to look at the D challenge or N challenge. That is, if you withdraw certain drugs, does that manifestation or symptoms disappear? And when you introduce that treatment or medication, does that symptoms reappear? So that is what is termed D challenge and N challenge. So you have to also consider etiologies. That is, you have to rule out concomitant medication or underlying disease that might give same manifestation. So you have to have that skill set. Okay. So the ecosystem dynamic. Medical monitoring, it sits in the intersection of multiple stakeholders because if you are working in a research setting, you will realize you'll be working in a multidisciplinary team, working with so many people. So in research ecosystem, sponsor rely on medical monitor to ensure safety data withstand regulatory audits. So that is why I said medical monitor protects both the patient and the trial. And for the investigator, that is the PI, is rely on the medical monitor as a clinical peer to discuss protocol challenges and other things. And also medical monitor guide CRS on critical safety data. That's data focus point. So across trial phases, the intensity of monitoring changes, but the responsibility for patient safety do not change. So in phase one, that rely mainly the medical monitoring role is has to look at the intensive real-time safety adjudication, while in phase two and three, um, the medical monitor has to understand the strategic multi-center signal detection as explained earlier by Precious. So, and phase four, you have to look at the long-term population surveillance. So, career, next slide, career pathways in medical oversight. So I can tell you there is no single entry point into medical monitoring. Many physicians begin at sites as sub-investigators like myself. So I started as a sub-investigator. Some will start as principal investigators. Others, they move into sponsor or CRO roles as medical monitors. Then from medical monitors, they can move to medical advisors. So with experience, this can progress into clinical leadership roles like clinical program lead or medical director. So in reality, these pathways are fluid, and many clinicians cross between site and sponsor all over time. So what matters is not speed, but you have to have the credibility and consistency. Next slide, please. So what are the professional toolkits you need for you to become a strong medical monitor? One is you have to have GCP literacy. That is absolutely, you have to have absolute command of ICH, that is International Council for Harmonization, good clinical practice, regulatory standard. And there are so many platforms where you can, all sites, you can take this course for free. You can have this GCP certificate in, like myself, I have CITI certificate and I have three certificates. So there are so many websites you can, even in a National Institute of Health website, you can get this GCP certificate. And the next for you is to have safety vocabulary. You have to master MEDRA, that is Medical Drug Regulatory Dictionary, and WHO drug terminology, though they are not necessary, but it's a plus. And you have to you have to have decisive action during safety alerts with incomplete data. If the data is incomplete, you have to get you shouldn't rush to interpret lab results or data. You have to get your full investigations for you to interpret. If you have doubt, you communicate with the team for you to have the complete data before you take decision. And you have to have scientific diplomacy because you have to have a effective communication. This is because you are in, as I said, you will be working in a multidisciplinary team, working with so many people, so many professionals. So you have to know how to talk to people. You have to have a diplomatic way of sharing your suggestion or your recommendation. You shouldn't be harsh because in research, everyone has his own responsibility and everyone's opinions matters. So next slide. So for path to transition, professional growth for clinicians interested in this pathway, you have to certify early. You can volunteer as a sub-investigator because this is very important. You have to volunteer. If you volunteer for the first time for a certain role, so it gives you so many access. It gives you so many opportunity because if you don't volunteer or you have to wait for a certain trial that you have to be paid for you to get into, so you are losing. So my advice is you should volunteer. And truly, you have to master protocol, not just consent forms. If a study is designed, you have to follow the protocol, you have to read it, you have to understand it, and you have to apply it. Very important. And you have to build evidence of clinical judgments in research settings. It's because I can say medical monitoring is not an escape from medicine. It is medicine practice with responsibility at scale. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for listening. I'm happy to take questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Iguda. I
Yeah,
think
thank you.
it's one of the first time I've sat down to listen to, and please don't take this in the wrong way. First time I've sat down to listen to a Nigerian medical monitor within the Nigerian setting speak so eloquently. So I really appreciate the fact that you took some time to settle down, you prepared for this. And it's not about what you said, because you can come here and actually throw a lot of jargons at us. But it's the fact that you have simplified it for us to actually have a clearer understanding, and you've also spoken about those things that a lot of people tend to take for granted. For instance, mentioning the fact that you're working with multiple disciplines. So you cannot come with your our mindset, within our country, so to speak, and think that everybody must listen to you. Everybody has a voice. It is clinical research. I work with a lot of clinicians, so I can appreciate you saying that, because I'm a clinical operations project manager. I oversee the whole of the trial, but I need people like you to communicate with me about safety issues so that I can go back and work directly with the sites and make sure that we are reporting safety issues correctly and all of that. So I really appreciate the way you've delivered it. Now, my
Thank you so
question is that this is this is one of the parts of clinical research that is specific to just clinicians. Is that
much.
correct? Or can
Yes.
any other person find their way into this pathway? That's my question. Thank you.
Actually, this role is specific for physicians because you have to, as I said, you have to have that sense of independent judgment. You have to make your own clinical judgment. So that is why it is specifically for physicians, uh, not for any other.
This is
Yes,
for the exclusive club of the physicians and the clinicians.
yeah.
Correct. Okay, but this role is primarily sat with the sponsors and not in any other setting, is it?
Pardon?
I said, so this role is primarily sat within the sponsor space, not in any other setting, not like the CROs, not the sites. It's the sponsors that usually employ this type of role, correct?
The sponsor can employ a medical monitor, and at the same time, a site or principal investigator may also employ a medical monitor to oversee his clinical trial. So it's not
Oh,
merely for sponsor industry. I mean,
okay. So, but in
yes,
the case where a principal investigator would require a medical monitor, then that means it's more an investigator-driven trial
right.
than a sponsor-driven trial, right?
Exactly. That's what
I
I
see.
mean. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, for every other person that's listening, one of the key things that, Dr. Mikuda mentioned is that, you need to look at um, the possibility of volunteering. He is lucky enough that one of his friends left and he was able to, to get into the industry. And this is why we are doing this. This is why we are doing this, so that we can shine the light on the gaps that we have. It's not a very common role. Medical monitoring role is not something that's very common within the Nigerian setting. Most times you find that the sponsors bring in their own medical monitors, and then they will have maybe like a medical data reviewer in our own setting to communicate with the medical monitor, because as you said, you need that clinical judgment to be able to make that decision that will impact the trial. And so if you have like a big trial, which is like a phase 3 trial, there's a global trial and they're looking to like enroll over 2,000 patients or whatever, and then you find that the sponsor is somewhere from America, and I don't have any issues with them, but you find that most times they're not going to come and employ a medical monitor within the African setting. So we are trying to push that they have to recognize that we have that capacity, we are capable, we can actually, we are able to also provide the right judgment. I see a hand up. Ganiat, you want to go ahead?
Yes, please. Good afternoon, Dr. Shams. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you so much
afternoon.
for sharing this insight. My question is that as a medical monitor, you mentioned that it's, strictly for clinicians, and then you have to, bring in your judgment based on science and then what is required in a clinical trial. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask that, how do you weigh clinical judgment against like what is strictly written in the protocol? Like maybe there is a safety issue that comes up and you decide that should I follow the protocol or use your own clinical judgment as a medical monitor to decide what the next step would be. I don't know if you get my question.
Yes, I understand. So, as a medical monitor, there is only one thing you should understand. Once you have been given that role, your main responsibility is patient safety. So,
Okay.
yes, it's the primary thing. Any other way, if the sponsor or the investigator has to push you maybe against certain timeline and so on, your role is mainly to safeguard patient safety, and you can communicate with them in a professional way that they will understand that you are also protecting the clinical trial against scrutiny and so on, because so many questions will be raised if something has happened to any of the participants in a wrong way. So that's it. I hope I have answered your question, or do you need further explanation?
Yes. The answer was clear. Thank you very much. So safety comes first, then protocols can be.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that, yes, the protocol may be written, but I've said this in one of our webinars. Protocols are mostly copy paste process because they all have like the same template worldwide. So they
Mm.
are mostly copy paste, and in as much as our clinicians and our scientists are fantastic, they are also prone to errors. So if you want to say you want to if you say the protocol is king and the protocol takes precedence over the patient's safety, then you will run into trouble, just as Dr. Iguda said. Your primary responsibility as a medical monitor is that you are monitoring medically. You are monitoring the safety. You are monitoring the efficacy. You are monitoring the data that's available to you. And is it making sense? I mean, the perfect example he gave about, a sickle cell's PCV being
Yes.
over, 50. My sister had sickle cell. So when you said 54%, I was like, 54, okay, where? How did they get that
Mm.
from? You know,
Mm.
I know they have like extremely low, and for those of us who don't know much about sickle cell and all of that, 54% means that there's a big rush of the blood through the veins, and you will have a cardiac arrest because the joints, the cells will get stuck in the joints and they can't get oxygen into their body. So they will die at that level. So, being able to have that understanding the lab values or the lab applicable values for different, the different biomarkers of medical situation is extremely important. So if somebody, for instance, had a copy paste error in terms of values within a protocol and you say, I'm following specifically what the protocol has said, then you will run into trouble because you have assumed that the protocol is correct more than the medical judgment that you should have as a clinician.
Yes, if I can add another example, I came across another participant. The protocol says if a participant has a hemoglobin level of less than 6, you should not enroll that participant. So I had another participant with hemoglobin of 6. Meanwhile, if liver function test and other investigations has not been mentioned. But when I reviewed that patient, though he has not violated any of the exclusion criteria or inclusion.
Criteria, yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
but with hemoglobin of 6 and drench liver function test, I know definitely something is wrong. That
Mhm.
participant, and he's going to have to be taking a drug that will be affecting his liver. Mm. If what I mean is that if his liver is not functioning well, that drug might
Hemoglobin will
have
continue
a
to drop.
negative effect for him,
Yeah,
yes, instead of
yeah,
positive. So,
yeah.
in that instance, I will not follow the protocol. I have to follow my clinical judgment. Thank
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. So for this session is specifically for those of, and as he said, it's not an escape from medical practice. It's not an escape. Yeah, it's not an escape, although some people consider it that, it's a desk job, it's an escape from your daily clinical life as a doctor. It's not an escape. Actually, this is more work than just diagnosing patients and prescribing for them. This is way more work. So for those of us who are like medical students or doctors in our midst, please take note. If you want us to bring back Dr. Iguda for addition, because this was just a quick snapshot, I'm sure we would love to have him back so that he can share more insight with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Iguda. Please stay online in
Thank
case
you.
anybody has any questions. Joke, I'll hand back to you. Welcome, Dr. Titilayo Mercy Adewuyi. Can I check if Dr. Titilayo is online already? If you can, please turn on your camera and then we'll spotlight you. Benga, can you please put this in a presentation format? So whilst the technical guys are solving that problem, just to quickly introduce Dr. Adewuyi, she's a veterinary pharmacologist and scientific leader currently serving as assistant director at NAFDA. She has extensive experience in biomedical research and scientific oversight, and she also plays a key role in advancing ethical, high quality research and strengthening research capacity in Nigeria and beyond. So thank you very much for joining us today. I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
I'll be speaking on the role of a principal investigator in clinical trials. First slide, please. So to begin your journey as a principal investigator, first slide, please. It begins with a strong background, academic background in medicine. I won't say medicine now, sciences, be it wherever field you want to practice. But here I'll be using medicine as a case study. But I have a background in veterinary medicine, my master's in veterinary pharmacology, and my PhD in veterinary pharmacology. So I'll be speaking from that context. So you need a strong background in academic background in any of the field you find yourself. And then my first exposure to research was during my DVM4, DVM5 year. That was in my undergraduate days, where we were exposed to we're divided into small research groups, and we're exposed to clinical trials. We're meant to carry out surgery in small animal patients. And we carried out about 6 surgeries in those patients. And we are supposed to manage any post-surgical complications from those patients. That was a project given to us in DVM4, DVM5. This was specifically in small animal soft tissue surgery as a course. And that was where I began that was my first exposure to research. We were under strict monitoring, guidance, and all that. And that was what sparked my passion for research. And then subsequently, going into my now final project, I did a research on effect on melatonin on red Sokoto goats. This melatonin is a substance that helps to modulate sleep. Here we wanted to evaluate the effects on the rectal temperature of Sokoto goats. And this is how my journey into research began. And then subsequently transitioned to now my MSc days. I was able to now to focus more on now pharmacology proper, where I studied, I made a research on the effect of a particular plant, Bosima basilicum, which we normally call Ephrin in Yoruba, St. Leaf in English. The effect now on acetaminophen-induced liver damage in Wister rats. Acetaminophen, as we know generally, is paracetamol. We used acetaminophen to induce liver damage, and then we studied the interplay. That was for my MSc research. So as early investigators, we begin to lead smaller segments of trials. As I said, a practical experience is needed, protocol adherence, and initial data interpretation subsequently. Next slide, please. So as a principal investigator, you are the cornerstone of any clinical research. You bear the ultimate responsibility of its conduct and integrity. What am I saying in essence? You draft the proposal, the methodology, your objectives, the aim, the objectives, the methodology, data analysis, and then you design, you are like the chief, the cornerstone of this particular research. You are the boss here. But not to forget, you need to work with a team. You need a team. That team will help you. You need to train your resource persons. And those resource persons, you need them as a team. It will definitely give you, that is what will determine the outcome of your research. And that is where the issue of training comes in. You define your research questions. I've spoken about that. And then you design your study protocols. And then before all this is in place, first and foremost, your role as a principal investigator, you need to determine who are the members of your team. Are they properly equipped? Do you need to provide trainings for them in the particular research you intend to carry out? Are they properly grounded in terms of what this research is all about? Do you need to bring in some experts in that field that will train your team? So your scientific responsibilities, you define your research questions. For example, for students that might be asking what are research questions. For example, for the work on, maybe we want to study the effects of this particular plant on acetaminophen-induced liver damage, you can ask, okay, at what dose does this extract exhibit this ability? And then what will be the effects of this extract on the histopathological results in this Wista rats? Those are possible research questions you can define. Then you design your study protocols. Are you going to do a pre-treatment, a post-treatment? Is it going to be a prophylactic treatment, or is it going to be prophylaxis or post-induction treatment? So you have the role of interpreting your results. These are the central roles of a PI. Then coming to ethical oversights, your results, the data now we must have high ethical standards. You must, like we now in the vet world, there's what we call animal welfare. You must take all your research must go through regulatory bodies. For we in pharmacology, the first one you will do is your pilot study. So your pilot study, before you conduct your pilot study, it must be according to the OECD guidelines. And then before you start those experiments, you will write a formal request to the board in charge of animal welfare committee that will give you a go-ahead on the risk before you carry out the project. And during the course of that project, the PIs must ensure that the patient's welfare is protected. And then they are of high ethical standards. Definitely from your sponsor, they will have highlighted some of the things that your research must focus on. And you as a PI will ensure that everything goes on within the stipulated points. Please, the next slide, please. So as a PI, you are to maintain effective communications with your CROs. Especially you are the sole, you are the cornerstone of this trial. So you should be able to source for grants, and then effective communication as the project is going on. You communicate, are you having any challenges? Are you still within the scope of what you want to do? You update regularly as stipulated in your memorandum of understanding. And then as a PI, you are able to convert your scientific hypothesis into practical and executable clinical studies. This is very, very important. You are to navigate unforeseen challenges. There will be challenges on the field. You are to make critical decisions at that point that would, even under pressure, you'll be able to make sure that your data quality is not compromised in any form. Next slide. Next slide, please. So these are the career pathways in scientific leadership. From the PI will lead and manage the civil side for a clinical trial. Then you have the lead investigator, so the sub-investigator, the scientific advisor, and lastly, the clinical research leader. This is a team. I said earlier that you cannot just be a PI on your own. You need a team for the work. Though you are the one that pulls the shots in the research. But this team is very important for the success of any research. Next slide, please. So this is just like a summary of the skills and competencies of the PI roles. As I said, for me, an in-depth knowledge of veterinary medicine and specific disease area is very, very important, because you need to know the pathology of these diseases. You need to know what are these diseases, what are the challenges that we are facing now, and which area requires strong research into. Where do you want to, what do you want to look at? What are the challenges we are facing at the moment, and what are the problems that are facing us as a country in terms of your research. You have to look at it, and then your in-depth knowledge of whatever field you are being trained in is very key. Then leadership and team management. You must be able to lead and motivate multidisciplinary research teams. Yes, you delegate. In fact, there are sometimes you have to manage conflicts. Conflict resolution, very key, because you are saying this, another person is saying this, and then you have to you are the one that have to manage that conflict to able to, so that in no way your research can go on smoothly. And then ethical judgment and accountability. Yes, you are committed to this research integrity, patient welfare, adherence to good clinical practice, and regulatory guidelines. And then you have to open a clear communication with your team members, your sponsors, and regulators is important. Sound decision making under trials, I said, so under pressure, to ensure that your trial progress without any issues. Next slide. So I'll be talking on mentorship and building research capacity. As experienced PIs, we are to guide early career researchers. We share knowledge, we provide critical feedbacks, and we open doors to new opportunity. You encourage students, young researchers, especially undergraduate students, or those that just finished maybe their first degree, thinking of what line to go. We act as mentors to them, and then we encourage them. We also encourage them to be volunteers in some of our projects. These, they'll be able to learn skills, and subsequently, they will also be able to define their career pathways, like, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to continue in this line? And all that. And then we invest in training programs, workshop, hands-on experiences. We do that a lot, where we want to make sure that our team are still in line with what we are doing. Sometimes when you don't do hands-on regularly, you are not so conversant with some of those skills again. So you don't just assume. We do training all the time, hands-on training. We bring in experts. Sometimes we do some in silico studies too. Yes, we call in, because right now the world is diversifying. We don't just do in vivo and in vitro, we also do in silico. And this is very, very important for our research now in Nigeria. Next slide, please. So as an overview, impacts of clinical research. Clinical research drives innovation and that improves overall health and welfare. It's very important because it's from your findings now as a clinical researcher that you're able to develop novel therapies and even vaccines. Okay, I'll come back to your questions, please. You redefine your diagnostic techniques. Where do we need to come in? Where are we supposed to improve on? And then from all these our findings in the research, it's like the forefront of a transformative advancement for us. Yes, this work will not only benefit individuals, it has broader implications on the public health through the One Health Initiative. These days, a lot of novel, a lot of research. Okay, no, please, I'm still on the other one. Yes, so the impact of clinical research is very enormous, but in as much as your work is key, what I would say is, from whatever research you're doing or whatever project you've been able to handle, there should be some recommendations. And what would this do for us? What are the public health concerns of this work? And how do we improve in the next trial? Next slide, please. This is a glimpse into the future, emerging trends. In this world of AI now, AI is all over the place. AI will revolutionize data analysis, yes. AI can help you to patient selection, drug discovery. I'll come back to the in silico work later. And then, in fact, right now you can have personalized medicine, like advances in genomics, where some particular treatments are tailored to a particular person's individual genetic makeup. You look at your DNA. You're developing drugs specifically for targeting some particular genes. This is the emerging trend. These are the innovations coming in now. Then we cannot leave the place of collaboration, international collaborations. Yes, we need it, because with these collaborations, we can address some particular global issues. Next slide, please. So our key takeaways here and the next steps, we are committed to excellence. As a clinical researcher, scientific rigor is normal. Ethical integrity and dedication to continuous learning. We learn every day, even while you are even as a PI, we experience a lot of challenge. We need to go back and learn. That's why as we are having new innovations, we keep learning. How can we do this better? From the challenges we encountered in a particular research, we are able to say, okay, we need a more modernized way of analyzing this data. We search for articles and journals, and then we look for resources that can help us to make sure that what we are giving is very, very, very excellent. Then impactful contribution. As a PI, your work directly shapes the future of the health sector, yes. Because that is why I said you must be able to, your work must be within your regulatory bodies, stipulated regulations that you are given, and then make sure that at no point was your data compromised. Data integrity. Can this data be reproducible under strict monitoring? If you bring this data down, I hope it was not just copied and pasted from another place. You must be able to say, okay, this particular work has impacts on this particular area or this area. And then it's a lifelong learning. The field is dynamic. We embrace new technologies, as I said, and methodology to stay at the forefront of discovery. We are open to learning. We want to learn more. We want new insights. How can we do this better? What is the way forward and all that? Thank you. Next slide. So in conclusion, this is just a summary of what I've said. I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Titi. Thanks. That was very, very insightful indeed. I appreciate that. So in terms of, my question is, in terms of the presentation or what you've just spoken about, you're speaking specifically from a investigator-led trial rather than a sponsor-led trial. Am I correct in assuming that?
Sorry, okay.
So I said, in terms of what you've spoken about, are you speaking from the perspective of an investigator-led trial or a sponsor-owned trial?
Both.
Both, okay.
But I think I majored more on investigator-led trial. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So being a PI, because one of what we're trying to do as well is to give the people additional information or to facilitate them having that opportunity to be able to, access some of these roles or find out how they can actually step into these pathways. So for instance, if you had to try and work with a sponsor, what's the kind of pathway? How do you get into that kind of role as a PI?
As a PI, yeah, okay. As a PI, first thing, you must apply for grants. So based on the scope of your work, what you want to go into, you look for organizations or bodies that are interested in such research. For example, if I want to work on malaria, there are a lot of NGOs that are involved in malaria research, both internationally and locally. I write to them, I prepare a very good proposal. As a PI, you must be able to design your work. Your work, it must be sellable. Let me use that word. It must be very attractive because you want a grant on this. You must be able to, that proposal must be very well written. So you will now apply for a grant, attaching your proposal. That's why I said, based on what you want to work on, based on your research. If I'm looking at malaria, for example, okay, I look for organizations that are that are involved in malaria research, both internationally and locally. You apply for grants and then you await response. But the way you package your work is very important, because I will not just want to spend my money on what will not make sense.
Yes, of course. So, but if it is sponsor-led, do you still have to apply for grants? Won't the sponsor make the pay you directly for?
Sometimes when it's sponsor-led, if the budget cannot cover the research, you apply for more grants, but you must let them know, because sometimes they want to be the only sponsor. So yes. If they now say, okay, we can't afford more than this. You let them know that this research cannot go on. It can't be completed with this. Can we get a co-sponsor? Because sometimes they want to take all the glory. Sorry to use that word. Yes, they want to be, so they don't want you to say, okay, they want to be the sole funder. So you must be able to, that's why, that as a PI, you must be able to manage those funds and then your budget. And then, even on the field, there are some unforeseen that will come, unforeseen circumstances where you have to maybe additional expenses and all that. You must be able to, okay, with this fund cover this and all that. So in cases where it's so sponsored, you don't need to apply for grants. You just use what you are given and work within that budget.
So as a PI, do you require like a business management side of you?
Honestly, that's why I said I didn't want to.
Do you need an MBA?
Yeah, that's why I said when I said a strong background in medicine. I don't believe medicine, education, sciences, admin, whatever. Even managing the team is admin work. You understand? Being able to resolve conflict, I said, even on the field, conflict management is not really a science-based stuff, but it helps. That's why you must be versatile. Honestly, having all those additional qualifications is not a waste. It will help you a lot, especially, as you said, in budget analysis, budget management. This will ensure that this goes for this goes for this, and we're able to utilize these funds appropriately for what is meant for. At the end of the day, you have a very good outcome.
Thank you very much. What we have seen is that the representation of Nigeria or countries in the West Africa is not something that is very strong within global clinical trials. I'm sure you are aware of that.
Yes, sir.
Which is the reason why we are driving this type of forums, so that we can talk about it. What do you think about the state of PI qualifications in Nigeria or West Africa? What's your opinion or what's your perspective about that?
Okay. Well, honestly, we've seen a lot, but the truth is, we're not doing so well. In terms of, we're not doing so well. That's the truth. As a PIs in Nigeria, there are a lot of challenges. Number one, you are a PI, but you are not properly equipped for that role. You just want to be the PI. You are not properly equipped for that role. You don't even know the technical know-how, but you just want to be the PI. Have you been trained? Are you equipped? Sometimes it's even safer to be just in the team. Yes, because science is all about teamwork. Research is all about teamwork. Be able to manage your team, work together as a team. There's no idea. Some ideas will come from even the person you least expected, and it will give you, as in you'll be open to suggestions and innovations.
So could
even
it
as
be,
a PI?
So I mean, without you saying everything, I can get exactly what you're talking about. And if you are joined earlier, and if you look at some of our previous webinars, and again, back to the reason why we are doing this, is because we want people to be educated. And I think the fact is that PIs, or the role of the PI, has been relatively restricted to a particular group of people. If we were abroad, we would say that, there's corporate racism or there's like institutional racism, but that's not the case here, because we are all Nigerians, we are all Black, and we all speak Pidgin English and English all together. But the fact is that there's a group of people, the professors, the ones that have been there for a very long time, who have not left there, and who are still the ones that a company outside of Nigeria, a pharmaceutical organization outside of Nigeria is looking to conduct their trials, they are still the people that they will go back to, because we've not been able to break that glass ceiling for either the young people or the women or something like that. But do you think maybe that's part of the challenge? Because I can tell you, I've consulted for a US-based cancer research organization, and they asked me to get a couple of, PIs that they wanted to have initial discussions with. And I'm not going to mention names or whatever, but I was quite disappointed because I had high expectations. These were people that, people said, oh, speak to these people, they are the people there. And I was highly disappointed, which is why I decided that we will start doing this. I mean, Joke, our clinical, our operations chief would actually confirm that the reason why we decided to start training people or start speaking about it so that people can start to learn. So what kind of forum can we create? Because that's what we are all about. That's what UCTSS is about. We want to build capacities. We know we are not doctors, but we want to create that space for the doctors to come in and start to understand that, yes, we don't have this technical know-how. How do we get it? How do we start to put our best foot forward so that we can start to attract research into our settings, because it's commercial research is extremely limited in Nigeria. It is not popular. Everybody's interested in coming to do and I have no issues with the sickle cell trials or the malaria trials or that. I don't. But I feel that it's we have been boxed into that space because there's so many other disease areas that we are not covering at all, which can be more commercially viable for us in Nigeria. So what do you think we can do to bring the PIs together and start talking to them about building their technical know-how? Any suggestions?
Okay, I think
from
what
you?
we'll do is networking. Networking, very important. Now I'm already with you on this. At least I will join your WhatsApp community, and I have a few other colleagues that are already here that introduced me to this platform. So we can start from there, and I can bring in more people. Yes. From there, we brainstorm together. Yes, we brainstorm, and we'll tackle this problem. I don't believe in.
I'm 100% for this.
We'll
What we did this last December, where we had about how many over 300 students join us for the Abuja workshop that we did last year. We have Dr. Joyce here, who was one of our facilitators. We had different facilitators coming. Exactly. We had people coming and we had a very brilliant, it was a fantastic turnout. I mean, people wanted to learn and people just wanted that opportunity. So we are willing to do that for the principal investigators as well, those who are inspiring to do that. We are happy to sit down and collaborate. And as you said, yes, networking, find those who actually have the right information, share it, and then let's start kind of like redirecting people in the right direction. And I believe that once we are prepared and we are ready, we'll start to attract, the right crop for research. Well, thank you so much for your time. Does any other person have any questions?
I don't think I've not answered
questions or comments. Oh yeah, the in silico thing. I thought maybe you could just throw a bit more light on the in silico.
Okay, it's a computer-based research where you don't go into the field, you don't go into the lab, you don't do in vitro, just using computer software. You analyze data. Yes. And this is what we are currently doing. Yes. For example, you might want to have have some particular disease targets. For example, I can go into, let's say, let me use one of my work as a case study. We worked on one in silico screening of SARS-CoV-2 virus. This virus incremented in COVID. Yes. So we now look for their targets. We download protein targets, and then we simulate. There's what we call simulation. Yes. So all this is computer-based. You download, you install the software on your system. We have Pyrex, Pymol, a lot of them, and then you screen. And then even in pharmacology, we do that now because we have what we call ADMETs. ADMET has to do with pharmacokinetics. We can run a pharmacokinetics profile using in silico, where you have all the values, and then you look at it. There's a range where you say, okay, this drug is considered safe or toxic. There's an ADMET table.
Okay.
It's a very elaborate field.
Yeah.
It's a very elaborate field, and that is what most organization now, most research now, if you do in vitro, you do in vivo, you do in silico.
In silico. Yeah.
Yes.
In silico kind of like creates that balance for you because
that balance. Yes, that balance. Yes, a data bank. Yes.
Yeah, and then because the animal rights people don't want you to start to keep killing the
monkeys. Yes, killing animals, killing monkeys. Yes.
Got
yes,
ma'am. All right, great. We have someone here. I don't know if Faith is still online. So we have a question. It says, I'm a pharmacologist and a pharmacist. I have regulatory experience and I'm very interested in clinical data management and CRA. Faith, I don't know if you want to link up with this person, if there's a way you can assist them or support them. Maybe they need some touch up on their CVs. And if you can give them a few links here and there, then you'll be able to do that. That's another thing we can do. We can link you up with people and then you can follow up with them. Yes, Ganiyat.
Hi again. So, my question for Dr. Titi is, after like I saw that you had like a PhD, doctorate degree. So I want to ask that what are the additional experience or requirements that are typically needed for someone can serve as a principal investigator? If, for instance, now I want to become a principal investigator, so after BSc, I know I would have to do a master's, then possibly PhD. But aside from that, is it like a process that you have to start from entry roles? In what area before you now build that career trajectory up to the point that you become a principal investigator? Yeah.
Thank you, Ganias. First and foremost, I said a strong background in whatever field you find yourself. Right now, you'll start first as a volunteer. It's a transition, a volunteer. Then gradually, maybe an investigator, gradually an advisor, gradually you link up, maybe you'll be under a team, maybe you'll be part of the monitoring team, and then it's a transition. But first and foremost, your first and second degree is key. Because in the first degree we all know is elementary. I'm sorry to use that word. It's elementary in research. You are still a baby coming up. Second degree, you are still rubbing hands together. Then the third degree, now your PhD, which will open you up more, and then your postdoctorate. So even at the PhD level, fine, you can be a PI, but it all boils down on your experience. Your experience. Have you been on the field? Have you been a volunteer? Have you joined in clinical trials, experiments? What do you have to offer?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And Ganiyat, one of what Dr. Iguda mentioned was that you can start by being a volunteer as a sub-by. And being a sub-by is interesting because you can have up to 10, 20 sub-bys on a study, or you can have one principal investigator. So you can, if you have the opportunity to volunteer as a sub-by, everybody's always looking for free labor. So that one will not be hard. If you show yourself up and go like, okay, I am available, I'm interested in research, this is the work that I have done, just as Dr. Titi said, your experience will speak for you. So I think we're relatively challenged in Nigeria because most times we want somebody to come and say, oh, I know somebody from somewhere. Go and meet them, give them a letter, tell them that you are from me. You don't need that. That's why I love this industry. You don't need anybody. Your work will speak for you. Your work will speak for you. I've been a project manager for over 15 years. I like being a project manager because I like being in the thick of things. I don't like politicking. So when I became a director, I stopped the director work. I resigned and I went back to be a project manager. I enjoy it because I enjoy the thrill of running a trial when you move through the stages. One of the studies I'm currently working on right now, we are coming into interim analysis and everybody's gearing up and they're going about to fight themselves. Data management is fighting clean dev is fighting biostats, everybody. But eventually we get to the end point where we are going to. So what I'm trying to say is that find your own space, find your footing and plant yourself there and start to build yourself. That's the most important thing. Volunteer for whatever you can do, glean from anywhere that you can. We will continue to do sessions like this, bring in people who can share that knowledge. And then as we receive from people, you get that knowledge. You can also use that to, start to build yourself, as an individual. And then it just takes an opportunity for you to apply that knowledge. Once you apply that knowledge, you're good to go. All right. Okay, so we have another question. I am a biochemist and also a data analyst. I'm very much interested in clinical data research, data management, and CRA. Yep. So like we said, what everyone's shared today is that you can volunteer. So let's look for opportunities either online. I would love to have pulled everybody in and say, you know what, come and volunteer at UCTSS, but currently we are quite limited with space because we're a startup organization. So we hope to continue to grow, and as we grow, we'll continue to have room for more people to join us, you know. But please spread the word. This is what we do. We, you know, facilitate this type of discussions. We have our Tuesday roundtable knowledge sharing as well, where we discuss any topic within the industry. And we believe that from there, people learn as well. Please join our WhatsApp community. We have our channel on YouTube. We're on Instagram and LinkedIn. We throw out a lot of information regularly, either something that's trending in the industry or what we have been able, you know, to develop within the system. So this is what we wanted to do, and I'm glad that we are continuing to achieve that goal, because before we started it, it wasn't something that was popular. Everybody was just, you know, operating in their siloed space, and because it was so siloed, we have not seen growth in the industry. So we will be coming back to you, Dr. Titi, to discuss how we can find like a conference or something for PIs, and
Okay.
let's gather everybody in a room and let's see what we come out with from there. Thank you very much.
Looking forward to that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Joke, everyone that took their time to join today. Our sessions, you there's always something, you know, to benefit from our sessions, you know, and because we take our time to find the people that can share it and share knowledge. We don't know everything. We are just administrators. If you ask us, I'm just a simple administrator. Forget about my glorified title called project manager. We are administrators and we are facilitators. We want to facilitate knowledge within this industry. We want to grow it in Nigeria and West Africa. We want people to have an understanding of what are the benefits within this industry and how we can actually leverage that to continue to grow, you know, our economy in Nigeria. It's not everything that is oil and gas. It's not everything that is about IT or music. I'm not whiskey. I can't sing. I'm not Burna Boy. I can't sing. But this one I can do. So we'll talk about it everywhere that we go. All right. So thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening and then speak sometime soon. Take care. Bye bye.